What does it mean to pass the guard? Simply to get in front of both the grips and frames of your opponent's legs, level 1 and level 2 of their lower guard, and gain chest to torso connection, usually in the form of chest to chest connection. To keep chest to chest connection, you need to keep your opponent flat on their back. If you're unable to keep your opponent flat on their back, you can instead look for chest to back connection to gain that chest to torso connection. The reason you need to get in front of your opponent's legs is so they can't use them to guard their inside position. Getting in front of the legs is a form of isolation to prevent them from being able to effectively grip, frame, or close off space using them. Those frames will now be pointing away from you. You keep them flat on their back and keep chest to torso connection by isolating their upper guard by taking inside position on their upper body. For example, a crossface and an underhook. When we refer to the guard, for simplicity's sake, we're referring to the lower guard of your opponent, their legs. There are only 4 ways to pass the guard. You can go through the guard, around the guard, over the guard, and under the guard. For example, through the guard would be a pass like a knee slide where you're actively entering into the guard to pass. An example of around the guard would be a Toriano pass. Or a leg drag where you're actively seeking to stay out of the guard to pass. Over the guard would be techniques like step through passes and cartwheel passes, and under would be passes like double under passes. All the ways to pass follow the same principles. Let's look at those principles as well as establish what the guard is. The guard is the legs. Grips are the feet. Frames are the knees and shin. In front of the knee closest to and including the torso is inside position. When in the guard, your opponent's grips and frames together manage distance to prevent you from taking inside position on them, as well as to take inside position on you. In their guard, their grips can both frame to keep or move you further away from them, and hook to pull or keep you closer to them. Primarily, the way your opponent can grip with their feet is either by using their instep as a hook, or the flat of the foot to frame. Although they can grip with their heel, but it's less common other than in guards like single leg X. The flat of the foot and the instep are the most common ways to grip with the feet, so grips can both hook and frame, but frames can only frame. Your opponent's frames keep or move you away from them. In their guard, their first layer of defense is their feet and the second layer is their knees. Or you can think of the first layer of defense being grips and the second layer being frames. The way that your opponent grips with their feet determines which guard that they have you in. Every guard is like this. Every guard is just ways of gripping and framing with the feet. Knowing this, you must follow this simple rule of jiu-jitsu theory: keep your opponent's feet off of you. In other words, keep their grips off of you. Or in other words, don't let them establish a guard. This is the objective when passing, and it needs to be your primary concern, because if you get past the feet, all that's left is getting past the knees to get past their frames. If you can avoid the feet altogether, you just avoided the first layer of defense and can head straight towards attacking the second layer. Not only that, but it's very difficult for your opponent to attack you without their ability to grip on you, without the ability to hook or frame with their feet. When passing, if you prevent your opponent from putting their feet on you, then you've prevented them from establishing a guard. If all they have left is their frames, then you're still in their guard, but they do not have a guard. There's a huge difference. For example, why is headquarters not a guard for the bottom player? Why is it not headquarters guard? What is the difference between headquarters and a guard like De La Riva, reverse De La Riva, or lasso? In each case, the passer is attempting to pass through the guard, but with De La Riva, reverse De La Riva, or lasso, they have their feet on you, hooking with their instep. They have a real guard because they're gripping with their feet. With no connection of the feet, you're just in their guard, and all you have left is to get past their frames, which is their knees. This is why headquarters is used so commonly, because it's a way to pass through the guard without allowing your opponent to establish a guard. Although in headquarters they do have their inside foot on you, but you should be sitting on it in such a way where it's isolated and can't be used effectively. You need to make sure at all times that neither of your opponent's feet can be used effectively. So understand that yes, you need to keep your opponent's feet off of you, but if they are on you, you either need to get them off you or isolate them. Shelving from the body lock is another example. Yeah, their foot is on you, but it can't really do anything meaningful because it's isolated. Whereas what's called sticky hooks when body lock passing is an effective counter. Because your opponent is keeping their feet on you, their feet aren't isolated. So it should be clear, always work hard to get your opponent's feet off you or isolate them from use. Then work to get past their frames, which is their knees. Let's look at some examples of passing the feet and then the knees. Here the guard passer is past his opponent's feet. He's working hard to also get past the guard player's knee using his left leg. However, he's unable to. He's unable to get past his opponent's layer 2 of defense. And then the guard player starts threatening a choke. But in these examples, I get past the guard player's knee, and now all they can do is grip with their inside position. They can no longer frame with that bottom leg. And passing chest to chest half guard, when you're past your opponent's knee with their upper guard isolated, is a pretty easy thing to do if you have the tools. So you have to get past the feet and then the knees, their grips and then their frames. They're layer 1 and they're layer 2. But how do you get past their frames? Let's look at this Jiu-Jitsu theory rule. Angles beat frames. You can't go through frames because it's their bone that you're fighting against. So logically you're left with two options. Either go around the frames yourself by changing your angle, or by changing the angle of your opponent's frames in relation to you. Understanding this leads into another important rule of Jiu-Jitsu theory. Keep your opponent's frames facing away from you. If you can do this, it makes framing impossible and gripping effectively very difficult. All guards follow the same principle. For example, when knee sliding, you can't let your opponent insert a knee shield. You can't let them point the frame towards you. This will keep you too far away from them. You need to keep their knee on the outside, pointing towards the sky, not you. The bottom frame should be pinned down against the mat too, pointing past and away from you. Now let's look at the side smash. It's just a different way of dealing with the frames. In the side smash, we're making both frames point away in the same direction this time, and working to get their feet off of us and then clearing the knees. You don't want your opponent's frames facing you, but you also don't want them facing the mat. You need to prevent their grips from touching you or the mat. If they can put their feet on the mat, then they can stand up, and now you can't pass the guard. This is what's called anti-jiu-jitsu, and it's very effective. Anti-jiu-jitsu is strategically disengaging. See here, Jedi is using anti-jiu-jitsu on me by disengaging to prevent me from getting grips on him. I also had the opportunity to use anti-jiu-jitsu on him. When he disengages, he isn't controlling my legs, and I can stand up anytime. If I did, then he wouldn't be in a position to pass. Here my opponent is unable to keep my feet off the mat. Here I risked being smashed, but I used anti-jiu-jitsu to my advantage. I stood up, and this is what it led to. This sweet knee bar, where I got all the style points. When passing or finishing a sweep, you need to always make sure you keep your opponent's feet off the mat. As anti-jiu-jitsu is a great tool, a tool you need to prevent your opponent from using on you. So remember this, keep your opponent's feet off of you and frames pointing away from you, and also keep your opponent's feet off the mat and frames pointing away from the mat. Turtle is a great example of you not wanting your opponent's frames to face the mat. Yes, your opponent turtling can be good for you if you can take the back, but people that are good at turtling can make it difficult to do so. Letting your opponent turtle can be a risk, especially against wrestlers, judokas, or sambo practitioners, because all these sports, one of the main objectives is to keep their backs off the mat. so they get really good at getting up off the mat. This guy wrestled for Team Canada and faced guys like Jordan Burroughs. He was really hard to keep down. The levels of defense also apply to standing, with the second layer of defense being frames on the mat and the first layer being feet on the mat. You can't pass guards when your opponent stands up, so you can't let them stand up. This is why you also need to keep your opponent's butt off the mat when passing, for 2 reasons. 1, because it's easier for them to take rips from their butt and then fall to their back to play guard. And 2, because if they're on their butt, they can more easily get to their feet, where they can stand up to disengage or wrestle up. Wrestling up is a type of sweep where you take rips while on the ground and then stand up to wrestle them down. See here, I'm on my butt and able to stand up to take my opponent down. He should have kept me on my back, not my butt. If you keep your opponent's feet off the mat, they can't stand up. Feet on the mat is a requirement of standing up. You can put the guard player on their back by lifting up on both feet, or lifting one foot and pushing on the shoulder or head. In both examples, see how I step into the guard to headquarters to pass through the guard? As I step between the legs, I make sure to not let my opponent establish connection with his feet, so now all I have left to do is get past the knees, which is layer 2. See here how my opponent is doing a great job of preventing me from establishing grips with my feet onto him. I keep trying, but he disengages as he's not content with the grips that I'm taking. Because I can't get my feet on him, I put my feet on the mat instead and wrestle him up. He did a great job keeping my grips off of him, but not keeping my grips off the mat. Let's look at some more examples of frames facing towards the mat. Here I lift my opponent for a double underpass, but I overcommit and he's able to stand up. I risked getting wrestled and I also lost top position. But here I'm able to keep my opponent on his back and keep top position because I didn't overcommit. Here the guard passer overcommits as well, allowing his opponent to get to level 2 of his defense, but he brings him back down to his back and he keeps top position. Here I go to pass the guard and try to keep my opponent's frames off the mat, but I'm unable to, so instead I attack the back. Now I want to be clear that allowing your opponent to turtle isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I personally am good at taking the back from turtle, but there is risk because they may be able to go from their level 2 of their defense to their level 1, or even attack from the turtle, especially against wrestlers, as turtle is known as the referee's position in wrestling and they have a lot of experience getting to their feet from this position. Okay, so we went over in depth how to get past the legs, their guard, but what's important to understand is that there's actually 2 guards to pass. The legs are the lower guard and the arms are the upper guard. They often work together, but they should be thought of separately, especially when passing because they really are separate and need to be addressed accordingly. In striking, your arms protect your inside position, they protect your head and your body. In boxing, you can only use your upper guard because only punches are allowed. In Muay Thai, where kicks are allowed, you can use both your arms and your legs as a guard, and often both are used together. Jiu-Jitsu is very similar, and let's look at how to apply this knowledge in a passing scenario. Many think of passing as just getting past the legs, but if you haven't passed their arms too, then they will use them to escape or prevent you from controlling them in the first place. Here's an example of my role, Bernardo Faria, where he was utilizing a lower guard pass in the form of an over-under pass. However, when he tried to transition to upper body control after he passed my legs, I was able to prevent his upper body grips using my upper guard and therefore I escaped as a result. Another more common example would be a Toriano pass, where the guard passer at some point must let go of their lower body grips to transition to isolating the upper guard. This is why passing around the guard often leads to many scrambles or your opponent turtling, resulting in no guard pass and the passer having to start again. This is especially true in no-gi. Only addressing the legs and relying on speed or your partner making a mistake to isolate their arms doesn't always work great at the higher levels. The way to avoid these scrambles is to isolate the upper guard first and then the lower guard second. And this is exactly what you see in what's currently popular in competitive jiu-jitsu, evident in the rise in chest-to-chest half-guard passing and body lock passing. In both instances, you need upper body control first and then you work towards clearing the legs. This enables you to already have the upper guard isolated as you work towards isolating the legs. This is why you must always be searching for underhooks or head control. You can do it before or after passing the legs, But by doing it before, you ensure that you keep control as the legs are cleared. By trying to isolate the arms after the legs, it can often lead to scrambles. I love scrambles, but they definitely require speed, strength, athleticism, timing, technical knowledge, and more. Scrambles are always a risk, even if you're good at them. So next time you're passing and can't quite finish that last bit, consider isolating the arms first instead and passing with a more pressure-based style. And this is especially important if you aren't very athletic or you're an older grappler. Now, I'm not saying to not pass around, under, or over the guard. I'm saying that there's more risk of scramble and losing position. Passing through the guard carries less risk of scrambles once the pass is complete. However, you are entering into their guard and risk them establishing a guard. There's pros and cons to each method. We will look at passing through the guard and around the guard in the following section, as these are the two most common methods to pass.